This is Matt Gallagher with Americans for Prosperity, sitting here with State Senator Brian Helton of the 9th Senatorial District, here to talk about his op-ed that he published recently.
Right.
So, Senator, the title of your op-ed is Pro-Growth Policies Are a Rising Tide That Float All Boats. Why this op-ed? Why now?
Sure. Well, I think it's important in our state that we recognize what real economic growth is. And there is a difference between what the op-ed said, which is true economic growth, which is really organic and really starts with business. I think sometimes in government, we get it confused. We believe government creates jobs, and the reality is that's far from the truth. Private businesses create jobs and create opportunities. What they need more than anything is to get government out of the way, to cut regulations, to cut taxes, and let these entrepreneurs and these small business leaders start their businesses, run their businesses without the government constantly interfering and overtaxing them to death. So that was sort of the purpose of the op-ed.
You mentioned in the op-ed the difference between pro-growth and pro-business. What's the difference between those two ideas?
Sure. Well, in my mind, pro-growth is just that. It's true growth of our economy, true growth of our business climate here in West Virginia. Okay. And so pro-business, I think sometimes we in government have put that nomer on there where we believe that we should be a central planning agency that sets all businesses up, that in a lot of cases participates in corporate welfare to buy companies to be here in West Virginia. And long-term, that's not sustainable. There's too many examples here in West Virginia of where we've tried to take that approach, and that's just not the right way. Government should not pick winners and losers in industry. The free market should do that for us.
And we can get to some of those examples in a minute, but you talk about incentive packages, tax breaks specifically for individual businesses, right? Why is that, I guess I'd say, a bad thing?
Yeah, well, I think we can have certain incentives because we are in a competitive world, right? But we don't need to do government handouts. So in other words, salvage value for certain companies that come in that create exponential amounts of jobs, that lift the tax base, that without those, we don't have those job opportunities. I think there's a place for that. But more what I was speaking to in the past here in the state, we've done deals where we've actually given grants. We've actually given people money to be here up front, even above and beyond what a normal incentive package would be for a company coming in. And that's really cost us dearly. You know, a couple examples of that. There's one here in Charleston where we gave away $25 million to a company to create electric buses. Green New Deal bus company that has failed miserably, left our taxpayers on the hook for those dollars. We all celebrated that like it was a big win. And by the way, look, Matt, we gave them that money, $25 million, so that they could sell us those buses back for 3 times what we could buy a good old diesel bus for. So I think that's an example of where, as a government, we can't participate in that. We have to create regulations that work for business. We have to create a tax structure that works for businesses, and we have to have infrastructure in place. So I applaud what's going on right now with our economic development, where we're taking these dollars that the government has in excess and creating site-ready places where we've got broadband, we've got electricity, we have water, we have all the infrastructure it needs for business that wants to take advantage of all these great things we've set up to come in and set up shop here in West Virginia.
You talk about setting up a sandbox, right? An even playing field. Is that, correct me if I'm wrong or help me understand a bit better, the difference between small businesses, large businesses, are we targeting one more than the other, or is the goal just to create a sandbox where both compete?
Well, I think we want to create a sandbox where both compete, okay? What happens too often, and what we need to continue to work on here in West Virginia, is when you have a massive amount of regulations, you favor the big corporations. And the reason for that is the small businesses, in a lot of cases, can't fight those regulations off. They don't have the attorneys. They don't have access to these big law firms. They don't have access to the big CPA firms to comply. In a lot of cases, they can't hire a separate environmental group to consult with their company. So the more we reduce regulation, the more we see business startups, we see entrepreneurs start up here in West Virginia, as opposed to being at a huge disadvantage to these big corporations that number one have the infrastructure to deal with all this stuff the government puts on them, but number two, those big taxes don't hurt them as bad as they do these mom and pop companies who we want to see start up here in West Virginia, because that's what's really going to drive our economy here in our state.
So the distinction it seems like you make is it's not about large or small, that the great deal of it is businesses which can afford to hire lawyers or lobbyists are better able to navigate highly regulated environments. And so if you're looking for growth, it's about lowering those barriers to entry.
Yeah, absolutely. And it works on both ends. The small businesses are advantaged in a lower regulation environment, but also our state is more attractive to outside investment because we do need a mix of both. We want here in West Virginia good jobs so that our kids can stay home here. Too often we've seen a net migration out of West Virginia. We're starting to see that turn back now, in large part because we continue to cut these regulations. And just like Governor Morrisey's 5% tax cut last year, we need to see more of that. I think our state's really going to prosper when we completely eliminate personal income taxes. And when we get our corporate rates, our small business rates down to almost zero, that's when our state's really going to thrive. And we've seen that in other states like Tennessee and others that have done that. And a year or two down the road, their economy skyrockets. And we can do that too here in West Virginia if we really set our mind to it.
So give me a vision of what West Virginia looks like in 10 years, right? Let's say we hit those goals, a 0% income tax, lower the regulatory burden on businesses. What does West Virginia look like in 10 years if we get that done?
I think it's a great question. We, for the first time in my lifetime, we are actually in the top half of the country in GDP growth. So our economic trajectory here in West Virginia is moving forward. A study by Rich States, Poor States showed us the 17th most business-friendly state. I'd like to see that be number one, and we can get there if we do the right legislative thing and continue to cut these taxes and regulations. So the things are looking up. We're moving in the positive direction. We're seeing all kinds of signals in our economy. Our unemployment rate's starting to come down in West Virginia. Our biggest issue right now, if we're going to have that success in 10 years where we're a top 10 economy, our workforce participation has to improve. So right now across our state, we are last in the nation when it comes to workforce participation. So there's a number of reasons for that, but I think a good solid approach to creating the business opportunities and then building this ready workforce is what's really going to set us down apart 10 years down the road from now.
What are the steps to get there legislatively, right? Who in the Senate do you think are the biggest champions other than yourself that can help get West Virginia to that 10-year vision?
Well, Senate President Randy Smith is doing a tremendous job, and he has really set our Senate body up for success. That's why he's going to be a long-term Senate president, because he knows how to get things done, and he knows really how to let his senators serve their districts, which is what we're all here for. All of us as elected officials took an oath that we would represent our constituents in Charleston, and that's all we're there for. We're not our own entity. We're simply a representative or an echo chamber for the people back home, and he lets us do that. Also, Glenn Jeffries, our Senate Economic Development Chair, is just knocking it out of the park. I've never seen a guy work 24/7. He works so hard to recruit businesses here to West Virginia. He's all over the place. If you need him to be in Charleston one day and jump on a plane the next day, he's there. And he understands business. He's a highly successful businessman, and he's turned that into real economic opportunities for West Virginia.
So one final idea. What is, if you want the readers of your op-ed, those who watch this interview, what is the one single idea you want them to take from both of these things?
I think the big thing is we have to make sure in West Virginia that we are a state that is committed to business, in that we have an environment that people want to be here. And then we have to make sure we're taking that money back, putting it back into infrastructure, allowing these companies to participate in our economy. And then we big time have to focus on our small business to get those startups going and find creative ways to build our workforce. Like as an example, right now we don't have enough electricians or plumbers or welders or truck drivers. All those things are things our government needs to focus on. You know, too often we're sending a lot of money, and I have nothing against places of higher education. I think there's certainly a place for that. We're seeing so many of our kids go and create all this massive college debt, only to come back and not have those opportunities. And guess what? If the opportunities are there, in a lot of cases, they don't have the skill set. We're seeing right now those blue collar skill jobs like plumbers, electricians, the things I mentioned are off the charts. They're making money. They're be able to provide for their family. And if we can prove we have that sort of workforce here in West Virginia, that leads to these manufacturing opportunities or other companies that come in knowing we have that skilled workforce that's ready to go.
Okay. Senator Helton, thank you for coming and speaking with us.